Margaret Mary Harrison awoke to a world of splendor so profound that it took several waking moments to realize that it was, more or less, the same old world she had awakened to each morning for the past 31 years. Yet in no way was it the same. She pressed her eyes, then sat up and looked around, dazzled. It was her room, the room in her parents' house that had been hers since the breakup with John 4 years ago. The things around her were her own things. The morning streaming through her window was just a morning, but never in her life had she known such color, heard such music, felt so exalted. Bright eyes wide with wonder, tremulous with confusion, she gasped and felt her heart racing. The worn bureau by the door seemed alive with subtle colors, a thousand shades of wood tone radiating from deep within its varnished oak. The mirror, with its age-flecked edges, was a wondrous, enticing thing, beckoning to other worlds beyond its crystal surface. Textured walls above their paneled fascia were no longer dead white. Myriad diffusions of pastel highlight tinted each peak and valley. The picture by the lamp, a dusty old Georgian thing she had salvaged from her marriage only because John wanted to keep it, suddenly was a rite of color, a festival of tender shades and subtle meanings. She felt she could become lost in it. Birds welcomed the morning, and she counted them. A mockingbird sang its territorial prerogative. How did she know that? She knew. The muffled chirps of 3 sparrow fledglings still in the nest, and she read the demand and the desperation in their tiny voices. 2 would live to fly away. She bit her lip, stopping it. She commanded herself, just stop this. Throwing back the covers. The quilt on top carried traces of scent long forgotten. A cedar chest, her grandmother's sachet. She dashed to the bathroom and turned on the water at the sink. Its flow song with velvet brilliance, infinite gradations of bell-like tones. Desperately, she splashed the cold water over her face, noticing even in her confusion that the tip of her tongue sampled and dwelt on each of the 100 tiny tastes that make up water. She splashed again and found herself counting, through sensitive fingertips, in the lashes of her eyes. She was trembling. She looked in the mirror. The face there was completely her own, but as she had never seen it before. She had never noticed those amber to rouge highlights in her dark hair. 31 years of mirrors, and none had ever shown her the variety of shadings in her dark eyes, the fluid texture of irises, the dark depth of pupils imaging herself. How had she never noticed such things? They were so obvious. Stop it. Stop it this minute, please. Sudden fear as she thought the plea. My God, am I dead? Am I a ghost? Is this what it's like? She whirled and looked back through the bathroom door. Relief dizzied her. Her bed was empty. She had almost expected to see herself, her body, lying there. Back to the mirror. She peered into her reflected eyes. There were radiances here. Drops of water hitting water was a minute lyric. From the wall lamp came a soothing 60-cycle hum. Tile beneath her bare feet was cool and resilient. Everything was bright clarity. Her awareness stunned and frightened her. It was as though she had been born this morning. Dread thoughts suddenly whirled through her head. Had she suffered a stroke in the night? Was some terrible thing eating her brain cells? Had she somehow been drugged? But it didn't feel wrong, just wondrously new. a revel of marvelous awareness with a hint of bittersweet longing at its roots. Hesitantly, she spoke to her reflection, noticing as she did the infinite qualities of her own soft voice. Meg, is this you? Are you... Am I me? She lowered her eyes, feeling suddenly ridiculous. Damn it, she shouted. Stop it. As suddenly as she had found it, the intense awareness receded, seeming somehow startled and apologetic. She slumped, head down, leaning on the sink for support. She felt dazed, confused, disoriented. She breathed deeply several times, shaking her head. Avoiding her eyes in the mirror, she turned away, squaring her shoulders. Her awareness still seemed acutely vivid, but by comparison to a moment before, she seemed back to normal. What in God's name, she asked herself, had happened to her? Nothing in her life had ever so shaken her as what? What had it been? Deep down she knew that whatever it was remained, held somehow in check, and that she could let it return if she chose. She slipped into her old robe and went to sit on the edge of her bed. What happened to me? She muttered. It's as if But nothing happened. I just woke up. She jerked upright. There had been a response. Some part of her, it seemed, had agreed. There was a faint tingling behind her forehead, just above her nose. The dread came again. A brain tumor? No. Something assured her. Nothing dreadful at all. There was a note of apology. For Christ's sake, Margaret shouted. What is this, a conversation? Who's talking to me? In the silence she heard her mother's distant voice. Meg? Meg, are you all right? When she didn't answer, there was a familiar creak of the third step. She hurried to her door and opened it. I'm all right, Mother. I'm just talking to myself. I'll be down in a few minutes. Oh, all right, dear. Breakfast is almost ready. The step creaked again. She went to her window and opened it wide. Morning sun had cleared the top of the Fletcher house across the street. It spangled through the walnut tree. She felt its dancing radiances on her skin and was startled at the joy she felt. Hesitantly, she unhooked the screen, leaned out, and peered upward. There it was, right up under the eave, a clumsy nest of twigs and straw. Deep sympathy welled in her for the hungry baby bird that would not survive. Biting her lip, fighting to restrain her self-control, she closed the screen and hooked it again. She had dreamed, she told herself. She was still wrapped in the clinging wisp of a dream, that was all. It was a dream, but then, what was the dream? She tried to sort it out. Suddenly there was an image, a face. She wheeled and, obediently, the image came clear. A man's face, but odd. A face she had never seen, but seemed instantly to recognize in some way. A slightly triangular face, broad forehead, clean planes of cheek tapering to a strong, sensitive chin, wide-set, slanting eyes the color of dark rose gold, so gentle and so masculine that she felt her breathing go ragged. They looked at her, into her, knowing her, arched brows and a wide, sensitive mouth with a trace of gentle smile. It was the strangest, most compelling face she had ever seen. With an effort of will, she turned it off, wrenched herself from the image. It had left her feeling vibrant with a delicious melting sensation. My God, Meg, she scolded herself. You're as horny as a schoolgirl. Some unsuspected part of her, some tiny part, giggled. She would have sworn it. She suppressed it. How could she have dreamed such a face? Such an unimaginable face. I wish I hadn't stopped painting, she thought. If I could paint him, I could sell him for a bundle. He's beautiful. She was glad it was Saturday, a holiday weekend. She wasn't sure she was in any condition to cope with the mundane tribulations of a real estate office. Guiltily, she realized she was glad Roy would be gone another week. She didn't want to have to cope with Roy today either. Oh, Roy, she thought. If only you had a face like that. Eyes like that. She wasn't sure how much she loved Roy Holloway. She did love him, in a way. She probably would marry him one day, but not for a while yet. One day, she would feel better about her failure with John. Better about herself in general. Roy would wait. In his way, he understood. 4 years seemed a long time to pull oneself together, but she was getting there. Roy had been alone just a year now. They had started seeing each other after his wife was killed. They could wait a while longer. She folded her robe, took off her nightshirt, one of John's old shirts, which came to her knees, and looked at herself again in the mirror. The woman she saw there was trim and compact, the right curves in the right places, and all slightly exaggerated by the fact that she had to stretch to reach 5 feet tall. She thought of herself as an average-sized person despite that. They said she was the image of her great-grandmother on the O'Doyle side, a tiny, feisty woman who had lived to be 97. Well, she thought now, if that's true, then you weren't so bad, old Maud. The mirror showed her a tiny, pretty face, high breasts, flat stomach, a small, resilient frame that had never failed to catch its share of attention from the male population. She knew she was still seen with a heightened awareness, but she nodded, satisfied. Not bad, Meg, old girl. Again that tiny, unsuspected presence radiated agreement, and she blinked and shook her head. Henry O'Toole was at the table, letting his cereal soak while he read the comic strips. Hazel was finishing the bacon. Margaret looked at her parents and realized with unusual intensity just how deeply she loved them. Her heart reached out to them, cherishing, and suddenly she recoiled. Her eyes went wide. She had tasted them, somehow, these people she loved. In that instant, she had known her parents as never before, and the suffering was there along with the joy. She had tasted them, and they were bittersweet. Again she felt the vague tingling behind her brow. She set herself a half-poured coffee. Mother, I don't want to eat right now. Save mine and I'll have it later. She walked through the living room and out the front door. She felt choked. She felt as though she wanted to cry and needed to be outside. She walked, soaking up the morning, letting it sing to her. Turning at the library, she had hesitated. Judy Garvey was coming toward her. Oh no, she muttered to herself. Not now. No soap commercial conversation this morning. Don't let her notice me. Margaret knew the thought was silly. At this hour, they were the only people on the sidewalk walking toward each other. But she felt again that tiny tingling behind her brow. As Judy approached, there was no sign of recognition. They passed. Margaret turned, puzzled, and watched a woman go the other way. Then the enormity came. Good Lord in heaven, she said aloud. She didn't notice me. But that was ridiculous. How could she not have? I did something. told herself. I wish she wouldn't notice me, and then I did something. What was it? All she could remember was a shift of the eyes, a shunting away, just at the instant when Judy became aware of her presence. A blink and a shift of the eyes, redirecting line of sight, redirecting attention, and Judy had passed by as though Meg were invisible. Again, Meg felt the tingling just behind her forehead, and a sort of apologetic worry. Not a question, simply a feeling. It was all right, wasn't it? It was what it was what I wanted, wasn't it? Puzzlement that bordered on panic tore at her. What has happened to me? She asked herself. What is it? Tentatively, she loosened the clamp hold on her senses. The right world gloried around her, nuances of color and texture caressing her, light that was more than light, shadow that was more than shadow, tones on the breeze, dimly heard, brightened and became a singing radiance of sound. Blossoms whispered to her, a tapestry of scent range that bordered on sight and sound. Sunlight in her hair murmured signals of pleasure. What is happening to me? She wanted to scream the question aloud, but even as it formed itself there was that response again, assurance from within. Nothing terrible has happened. Maybe something wonderful, but nothing bad. Don't be frightened. And the last was a plea. Fear hurt. Something in her. Fear punished. There was no need to fear. She wished away the brilliance, and it receded obediently. That shifting of the eyes, the pass unnoticed. It was a visible signal, but the response had been astounding. Judy Garvey hadn't ignored her. It wasn't like that. Judy had literally not known that she was there. She explored the idea, needing to focus on just one phenomenon. A shifting of the eyes, redirecting, but at exactly the right instant. How did I know when to do that? Even if I had known, how did I know when? It was when she started to be aware of me, just before she was. But how could I know that? The response that formed then was puzzled. How could I not know? She was there. How could I not have known her perceptions? Meg shook her head, so confused that she felt dazed, and as she moved past the post office, she saw Tommy Gentry and Hap Hastings standing in front of Hastings' restaurant, chatting. Hastings would be opening his door soon to get ready for the afternoon trade. Meg hesitated, then approached them. Both were facing away. As she drew near, they turned, and she let her senses guide her as she did the eye-shifting again. The men turned, looked past her, and turned away again. Neither of them had noticed that she was there. She passed them and went on, unseen. What was Hap Hastings worried about? Something to do with his son? She had an image of Corky Hastings, an impression of a classroom, a feeling of dread, failure, twice. Corky had failed 2 summer school courses. His father had just learned of it. How do I know this? How? The man is standing there and I pass within a foot of him. How could I not know? Meg returned home when the sun was high. Ravenous, she finished the remains of breakfast, assembled a sandwich, and went out to the sun porch. Hazel was at the pantry looking for insecticide. It's at the back of the second shelf, Margaret said, behind the bleach. Hazel glanced at her, puzzled, then retrieved the insecticide. How did you know what I was looking for? The same way I knew where it was, Mother. Her mother, walking back to the kitchen, did not respond. Meg sat on the quilted daybed. As far back as she could remember, the porch had always been her favorite place. Sunny in the morning, breezy cool in the afternoon, cozy and shuttered in winter. Tentatively, she eased the restraints on her new perception, just a bit, and savored the fantastic ride of colors, sounds, scents, and textures about her. She drank it in, then subdued it, and found she missed it. It was as though the world had gone from color to dull shades of gray. She tried it again, and subdued it again. She was getting the hang of it, whatever it was. Hazel came from the kitchen. "Meg, are you feeling all right?" she asked, noting an odd expression on her daughter's face. "I'm fine, Mother." Strange, she thought, how true that was. She couldn't remember ever feeling better. "Well, you look sort of distracted, I guess. No problems?" Problems. Without warning, her world was suddenly introduced itself to living color and stereophonic orchestras, but was it a problem? She didn't know what it was. She needed time to explore it, to think about it. Hazel was worried. The sense of her worry came sharply to Meg. "No problems," she assured her mother, aware of an overtone in her voice that soothed and reassured. "I was just thinking." "Oh." Hazel turned away, her worry gone. "By the way, I don't suppose you know where the upstairs by the bathroom sink. Dad left it there when he fixed the faucet." "Your father never puts anything away," Hazel fussed. Then she stopped and turned curious eyes on her daughter. "Meg, what are you doing? Reading my mind?" "No." There was no banter in the response, though she knew her mother's question was rhetorical. "I can't do that. I don't know what you're thinking, but I do know you want when you want it, and how you feel. Why didn't you tell me your back was bothering you again?" They stared at each other suddenly, desperately. Meg wanted to talk with her mother, to explain. But explain what? She didn't know what had happened to her. How could she explain anything? Nothing she could say would do more than make her mother worry. On impulse, she blinked and shifted her eyes, the thing she had done before, but Hazel was still looking at her. "It doesn't work if a person is concentrating on you," she explained to herself. Overwhelmed, she wouldn't let herself dwell on how she knew that. "It's all right, Mother," she said. "I'm just doing some soul searching, but everything is fine."